There comes a moment in life when the soul is offered a gift so rare it feels almost unbearable, the gift of true love. It does not arrive with thunder or spectacle, but with a quiet force that strips away all illusions. And yet, those who fear being seen, those who hide behind masks, often betray it. They believe they are escaping love, but in truth they are escaping themselves. What they do not know is that betrayal of such love does not end with triumph. It ends with a haunting, a regret that lingers like a shadow no passage of time can erase. The shadow of narcissism is not simply arrogance or vanity, as it is often portrayed, but rather an unseen hunger that resides beneath the surface of the personality. At its core lies a profound emptiness, a fracture within the psyche that cannot be healed by adoration or external affirmation. The narcissist builds a mask, carefully polished and shown to the world, and behind it hides a sense of insufficiency too unbearable to confront. True love is dangerous for such a person because love is not fooled by the mask. Love has the uncanny ability to pierce through appearances, to reach into the secret caverns of the soul and reflect back what has been hidden. When faced with this reflection, the narcissist feels an overwhelming urge to escape, for it threatens the fragile construction of their identity. Betrayal becomes a way of avoiding the terror of being exposed. This shadow is like a restless ghost, always whispering to the narcissist that they are not enough, that they must take more, demand more, control more, in order to feel alive. But the paradox is that the more they seek to fill themselves with admiration, conquest, or domination, the deeper the emptiness grows. True love offers them something radically different, a mirror of wholeness, a possibility of healing that cannot be obtained through manipulation or control. Yet, because they are unable to embrace this gift, they turn against it. They betray the very force that could have soothed their deepest wound, because to accept it would require humility and surrender. The betrayal is not simply an act against the beloved, but against the self. It is the psyche refusing its own medicine. Love shows them their shadow, both the beauty they deny and the brokenness they conceal. And instead of allowing that confrontation to transform them, they reject it violently. In this rejection, they believe they have triumphed over vulnerability, that they have preserved their autonomy and their mask. But what they do not realize in that moment is that they are deepening the fracture within. The shadow only grows stronger when ignored, and the betrayal ensures that it will haunt them more fiercely. This dynamic reveals why their actions cannot bring them peace. When true love enters a life, it leaves an imprint, whether embraced or rejected. For the narcissist, who has betrayed it, the shadow becomes heavier, darker, more unbearable. They have touched the possibility of wholeness only to cast it aside. And once that contact has been made, no amount of superficial attachment can erase the memory of what was possible. They may run from intimacy, but they cannot outrun the truth that was momentarily revealed. The shadow does not vanish, it remains, whispering louder than ever, reminding them that the betrayal was not only of another heart, but of the part of themselves that longed, however secretly, to be healed. The fear of genuine intimacy is one of the most hidden yet powerful forces shaping the narcissist's betrayal. To stand before another human being in the rawness of truth, without disguise, without performance, requires a depth of vulnerability that feels like annihilation to them. Their entire existence is built upon the careful construction of an image, a mask that seems strong, charming, or untouchable. Intimacy threatens this mask because it is not satisfied with surface appearances. Real closeness demands the unveiling of the fragile self that lies beneath, the wounded child who longs to be seen yet dreads being exposed. When love comes near, it asks for honesty, for surrender, for the willingness to be known without defense. For the narcissist, This request is unbearable, for it forces them to face the parts of themselves they cannot accept. What others perceive as indifference or coldness is often rooted in this terror of exposure. The narcissist knows, even if unconsciously, that love can dissolve the walls they have built, and this dissolution feels like a death of the identity they cling to. To let another see their weakness, their insecurity, their unguarded heart, would mean risking the collapse of the very persona they have spent years creating. Thus, intimacy is not experienced as a gift, but as a threat. The closer love moves, the more they retreat, lashing out or sabotaging the bond in order to restore a sense of control. Betrayal becomes their weapon of escape. By wounding the one who loves them, they create distance, a protective barrier that prevents the unbearable closeness they secretly crave but cannot tolerate. In betraying love, they believe they are preserving themselves, avoiding humiliation, avoiding the terror of being known too deeply. Yet in this act, they create the very loneliness they most fear. The paradox is striking. They betray intimacy to avoid vulnerability, but in doing so, they condemn themselves to the endless hunger for connection that never finds satisfaction. True intimacy asks for surrender, for the recognition that two souls must meet without pretense. It is not a performance, but a revelation. For the narcissist, this revelation exposes their hidden wounds and brings to light the shame they have buried. Betrayal, then, is not just avoidance, it is self-protection against the mirror of love that might reveal both their beauty and their brokenness. They cannot accept that someone could see them entirely and still choose to love them, for they do not believe such acceptance is possible. So they destroy the very proof of it when it appears, convincing themselves that intimacy is dangerous and that betrayal is survival. This is why their fear of intimacy inevitably circles back as regret. They once stood at the threshold of being fully seen, fully accepted, and instead turned away. What seemed like safety in the moment later becomes the memory of a door they closed, a door that may never open again. The illusion of power and control sits at the heart of why narcissists so often betray true love. They mistake love for something that can be owned, directed, or bent to their will. In their eyes, intimacy is not a sacred exchange, but a stage on which they must always hold the leading role. To them, surrender is weakness, compromise is defeat, and equality threatens the fragile hierarchy they use to maintain their sense of superiority. When true love enters, it does not play by these rules. It demands reciprocity, mutual respect, and the dismantling of the structures of domination. For the narcissist, this feels intolerable, and betrayal becomes the strategy through which they reassert their illusion of control. The irony is that this control is never real. What they command on the surface is only obedience, appearances, or temporary submission. It does not touch the soul of the one they claim to possess. True love cannot be chained. It slips through the fingers when treated as an object or a conquest. Yet the narcissist clings to the fantasy that if they betray, manipulate, or step outside the bond, they are demonstrating their independence, their dominance, their refusal to be tamed. They mistake destruction for freedom, not realizing that every act of betrayal binds them more tightly to their own emptiness. In the moment of betrayal, they feel a fleeting sense of power. They believe they have proven that no one holds sway over them, that their will is unbroken, that their identity remains untouched. But this power quickly dissolves because it is not rooted in strength but in fear. It is not mastery over life but avoidance of its deepest truth, that love is the only force that can bring real transformation. In rejecting this truth, they trap themselves in a cycle of false victories that lead to deeper defeats. The control they fight so hard to maintain is, in essence, control over vulnerability. To give themselves to love would mean relinquishing the armor, letting another see the wounds, allowing the self to be touched at its core. Instead, they betray, hoping that by inflicting pain they will remain invulnerable. But what they do not see is that the wound of betrayal cuts them as well. They may believe they have asserted dominance, yet inside, a quiet recognition stirs that what they destroyed was not the other, but the one chance at wholeness that life had placed in their path. Love does not require submission, only openness. It does not weaken but strengthens those who embrace it. The narcissist, however, interprets this differently, confusing equality with loss of control and confusing control with survival. In betraying love, they think they win. But beneath the mask of victory lies the gnawing realization that they have enslaved themselves further, that their illusion of power is nothing but a chain, and that what they sought to master has instead mastered them. The awakening of regret does not come suddenly for the narcissist, but creeps slowly, like a shadow that lengthens as the day declines. In the moment of betrayal, there is often exhilaration, a false sense of liberation, a feeling that they have outwitted love and preserved their independence. But time has a way of stripping away illusions, and what once felt like victory begins to reveal itself as emptiness. Regret is not immediate because the narcissist is skilled at distraction. They chase new admirers, surround themselves with noise, and bury themselves in pursuits meant to prove that they are unbothered. Yet beneath all this performance lies the echo of what they cast aside. True love leaves an imprint, and no substitute, no matter how dazzling, can erase the memory of its depth. The awakening comes when the masks they wear no longer silence the quiet moments. Perhaps it is a familiar scent, a forgotten song, or the emptiness of a room where once there was warmth. In these moments, they are forced to confront what they lost. Unlike ordinary regret, which can fade with time, this regret deepens the more they attempt to escape it. It is not only the memory of the beloved that haunts them, but the recognition of their own blindness. They betrayed the one connection that could have offered them authenticity, healing, and redemption. The regret is double-edged, sorrow for the person they wounded and sorrow for the part of themselves they denied. The haunting power of regret lies in its permanence. Even if they find new relationships, the shadow of comparison lingers. The admiration of others feels shallow compared to the soul-deep recognition they once tasted. They may not speak it aloud, but within them grows a knowledge that they turned away from something rare. Regret is their punishment, not delivered by an external hand but born within, an unrelenting reminder of the truth they betrayed. It gnaws at them when they are alone, strips their triumph of sweetness, and turns their victories hollow. What deepens this regret is the realization that true love does not return once it has been betrayed beyond repair. They may attempt reconciliation, but often the bond is fractured in ways that can never be restored. Love that once trusted does not always trust again, and the narcissist comes to understand too late that some doors close forever. This recognition awakens them to a truth they had avoided, that their actions have consequences beyond their control, and that no amount of charm, force, or persuasion can undo what has been done. The awakening of regret is thus not simply the acknowledgement of loss, but the beginning of an inner reckoning. They must live with the knowledge that they destroyed the very thing their soul craved most. And as time passes, the weight of this realization grows heavier, for regret, unlike desire, does not fade but sharpens, reminding them that what was once possible will never return. The eternal lesson of loss is the final truth that emerges when the narcissist has exhausted every illusion, every defense, and every excuse. Love once offered them a mirror of redemption, a chance to step beyond the mask and into authenticity, but they turned against it. In doing so, they set in motion a lesson that time itself will never allow them to escape. The loss of true love is not like the loss of ordinary relationships, for it carries with it the recognition that something irreplaceable has been shattered. The soul knows when it has encountered a bond that reaches beyond appearances, and when such a bond is betrayed, no substitute can soothe the wound. This is why the loss becomes eternal, not in the sense that life cannot go on, but in the way it permanently alters the inner landscape. The narcissist comes to realize that love was never an enemy, never a threat to their survival, but the very path that could have led them toward wholeness. Instead of embracing it, they fought it, and in fighting it, they destroyed the possibility of their own healing. This realization grows over the years like a seed planted in silence, slowly expanding until it becomes impossible to ignore. At first they may resist, convincing themselves that more conquests, more attention, or more control will fill the absence. But nothing replaces the authenticity of love once experienced. The lesson of loss is that the soul does not forget. It remembers in quiet moments, in the hollow victories, in the unfulfilled nights when everything else feels shallow. The tragedy of this lesson is that it does not arrive with fanfare but with inevitability. There is no dramatic revelation, no sudden awakening that allows them to reclaim what was lost. Instead, it is the slow unfolding of truth, that in betraying love, they betrayed themselves, and the opportunity for redemption slipped away. What makes this lesson eternal is not only the permanence of the loss, but the clarity it brings. They see, perhaps for the first time, that love demanded nothing but their authenticity, nothing but their willingness to be real, and that it was their refusal, not love's cruelty, that sealed their fate. As the years pass, regret transforms into wisdom, though often too late to repair the damage. They begin to understand that betrayal was not an act of power, but of weakness, that control was an illusion, and that the very vulnerability they fled was the key to their freedom. This wisdom does not erase the past, but etches it deeper, a reminder that every choice has consequences, and some choices alter the soul forever. The lesson of loss is therefore not only personal, but universal, that love, when genuine, is sacred, and that to betray it is to wound not only another, but the deepest part of oneself. And once such a wound has been made, its scar endures as a silent teacher, whispering the truth they once refused to hear. The betrayal of true love is not simply a wound inflicted upon another, it is a fracture within the betrayer's own soul. To turn away from love is to turn away from the very force that carries the possibility of transformation. What the narcissist fails to see in the moment of their triumph is that love was never an enemy to be conquered, never a power to be outwitted, but a mirror reflecting both their shadow and their potential wholeness. In rejecting it, they reject themselves. The deepest tragedy is that true love does not return once it has been shattered beyond recognition. There are no masks, no new admirers, no fleeting conquests that can recreate the sacred intimacy once offered. Time, instead of healing this particular wound, sharpens it. It whispers in the silence. It haunts in familiar places. It lingers in dreams where the memory of what was lost refuses to fade. The very bond they dismissed as fragile reveals itself to be indestructible, not in form, but in imprint. This is why their regret grows heavier with the passing years. For while love continues its eternal existence, untouched and undiminished, they remain bound to the absence of it. They live with the knowledge that they stood before a threshold of redemption and chose instead to walk away. Their punishment is not given by fate but by their own soul, which will not let them forget. The eternal lesson of loss is therefore clear. True love, when it appears, must be honored, for it is the one gift that cannot be manufactured, replaced, or reclaimed once betrayed. To turn against it is to condemn oneself to wander with a hollow heart, carrying the weight of what could have been, but will never be again.